The void screamed, not with sound, with absence. Every timeline in existence flickered simultaneously, like candles caught in a hurricane. Akumo stood at the center of it all, not as a being, but as a law. His form pulsed with white erasure light, consuming past, present, and future in a single breath. Goku was suspended inside a dead timeline. No gravity, no sky, no ground. Only the cold understanding that time itself had already been sentenced to death. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a Saiyan doesn't just break his limits, but breaks the laws that govern existence itself, you are in the right place. Hit subscribe. This chronicle is not for the faint of heart. The void had no color. It had no sound. It had no floor beneath Goku's feet, no sky above his head, no horizon in any direction. It had only one rule. Nothing here had ever existed. Goku's body drifted in absolute stillness. His arms hung at his sides like a man already dead. His black hair floated slowly, weightlessly, as if submerged in deep water. His eyes were open, but they were not seeing. They were searching. The dragon pupils, vertical, red, ancient, swept the emptiness with mechanical precision. There was nothing to find. There was nothing to find. That was the point. Akumo had not built this prison with walls. He had built it by removing everything a wall could be attached to. No ground to push off from. No air to channel ki through. No time to measure a heartbeat against. Goku exhaled slowly. The breath dissolved before it could form vapor. He reached inward, toward the dragon power. The platinum scales along his forearms pulsed once, then went cold. He pushed deeper, toward the void dragon energy fused into his core. The purple veins beneath his skin flickered, then flatlined. His jaw tightened. He tried Kaioken. Nothing. He tried Ultra Instinct's signature stillness. The technique had no surface to grip onto. He tried the raw Saiyan instinct that had carried him past every limit since childhood. It fired. It burned. It hit the edge of this prison and disappeared without impact. Like screaming into the vacuum of space. Like throwing a punch into fog. Goku's teeth pressed together. Not from pain. From the specific, terrible frustration of a fighter who cannot find the fight. A voice reached him, not through sound. Through the absence of it. You are already finished. Akumo did not appear. He did not need to. His presence existed in this space the way gravity exists in a room. Invisible. Total. Inescapable. I have erased warlords who commanded armies of gods. The voice was not loud. It was intimate. The intimacy of a predator standing directly behind prey. I have erased concepts. I have erased the memory of power itself. A pause. Calculated. You are a Saiyan. You are the smallest thing I have ever needed to contain. Goku turned his head slowly to the left. Nothing. He turned it to the right. Nothing. He looked straight up. The emptiness above him pulsed once. A faint, rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat made of silence. Akumo was everywhere in here. This was not a prison built from the outside. It was built around Goku's own existence. Everywhere Goku occupied space, the prison extended one step further. He was the cage. The realization settled in Goku's chest like swallowed ice. His fingers curled slowly at his sides. He breathed in. He breathed out. He looked straight ahead at nothing. And then, very quietly, he sat down, cross-legged, in the absolute center of an erasure dimension. Akumo's presence pulsed with faint amusement. Meditation. How very mortal of you. Goku did not answer. He closed his eyes. Not in defeat, in inventory. He began methodically cataloging every energy source inside his body, the way a surgeon examines a patient, calmly, precisely, without panic. The Platinum Dragon core, sealed. The Void Dragon fusion, suppressed. The Saiyan biology, active but rootless. The Zeno sacrifice. The warm, dying light that the imprisoned Omni King had poured into him like the last oil from a lamp, still burning. Small, almost microscopic, but burning. Goku's brow furrowed. He focused entirely on that ember. It did not feel like power. It felt like a memory, a child's laughter in a destroyed city, a hand extended across a battlefield, a king choosing to die for the man who imprisoned him. Goku's chest rose with a slow, unsteady breath. Outside this cage, in the fragments of timelines that Akumo had not yet fully consumed, Reality was deteriorating. The 12 universes flickered like dying stars. The angels who had bowed to Goku stood paralyzed in crumbling palace halls. Whis pressed one hand against a dissolving wall, his staff providing no reading, his expression, for the first time in eons, genuinely afraid. Vados knelt on what remained of Universe 6, her eyes fixed on the fracturing sky. The planets in each universe aged centuries in minutes. Oceans evaporated. Mountains dissolved into dust. Civilizations that had survived gods and demons and the Tournament of Power simply stopped. Not with explosions, with quiet. The quiet of things that no longer had a timeline to exist inside. Back in the prison, Goku felt it. Not through ki, through the Saiyan instinct that had never in his entire life known how to give up. The ember in his chest pulsed. Once, twice, his fingers uncurled. His eyes opened. The dragon pupils contracted to razor-thin lines. He did not stand. He did not power up. He simply changed the question. He had been asking, how do I break out? The right question was, what does this cage actually fear? Akumo's presence shifted, barely perceptible, but Goku felt it the way a veteran fighter feels the weight shift of an opponent about to strike. The smallest tension, the faintest recalibration. Goku's mouth moved. One word, barely a whisper. But in a dimension built entirely from silence, it landed like a thunderclap. Found it. Akumo's presence contracted, not dramatically. Not with fury or theatrical energy. It simply tightened, the way a fist tightens around something it suddenly realizes might slip. Goku felt it immediately. That microscopic shift in the architecture of the prison. The walls, the invisible conceptual walls built from erased existence, had adjusted. They had responded, and things that respond can be provoked. Goku remained seated. He did not move his arms. He did not ignite his aura. He simply held the ember from Zeno's sacrifice in the absolute center of his focus, cradling it the way a man cups a flame against wind. The ember pulsed, warm, insistent, alive. Whatever you think you have found, Akumo's voice returned, slower now, each syllable pressed with deliberate weight. It belongs to me. Goku's eyes tracked the empty space to his left, then his right. He was mapping the voice, not to find its source, to find its edge. Everything inside this dimension is a component of my design, Akumo continued. Your dragon power, your void fusion, the residual life force of my worthless son. A pause, sharp as a blade. All of it feeds the cage. Goku's jaw shifted slightly. He was listening. Not to the words, but to what the words were covering. A fighter who talks during a fight is a fighter managing something, concealing something, buying time. Goku had learned that lesson on a nameless battlefield before he could even name the lesson. He exhaled through his nose. Long, controlled, deliberate. And then he stopped trying to generate power. Completely. Every internal effort, every push toward dragon energy, void fusion, Saiyan ki, he simply released. Let it go. Like opening a hand that had been clenched for years. The ember remained. He stopped trying to use it, too. He simply let it burn. The prison shuddered. It was subtle, the way a foundation shudders before a crack appears. Barely visible, more felt than seen. Akumo's presence surged in response, flooding the dimension with erasure pressure so intense that the concept of color tried to form just to have something to destroy. Goku felt the pressure hit him. He did not resist it. He let it pass through, like water through open fingers. His body registered the force. His Saiyan cells cataloged the energy signature automatically, ancient instinct doing its work without permission. And somewhere in that cataloging, something clicked. The void dragon energy inside him had been suppressed by the prison. The platinum dragon power had been sealed. But they had not been removed. They were still inside him, compressed, pressurized, trapped against each other, fighting each other, like two storms sealed in the same jar. Goku's eyes narrowed to absolute stillness. He understood now what Zalama had tried to tell him, in a memory so old it felt like someone else's, about the nature of opposed forces. Destruction and creation are not enemies, the old dragon god had said, his voice like tectonic plates shifting. They are the same hand. One opens, one closes. Goku had nodded then, without truly understanding. He understood now. The Void Dragon wanted to consume. The Platinum Dragon wanted to preserve. He had spent every battle since their fusion trying to balance them, keeping one from overwhelming the other, burning half his focus on internal management. He stopped managing them. He simply stepped back from the middle, let them face each other directly. The reaction was immediate. The two energies slammed together inside his core, like continental plates colliding. The shockwave had nowhere to go. The prison absorbed external force, so it turned inward, deeper, hotter, more compressed with every passing second. Goku's body began to shake, not from weakness, from containment. His platinum scales along his forearms began to blacken at the edges, void energy creeping across the surface, then immediately whitened as the Platinum Dragon pushed back. Black, white, black, white, faster and faster. His teeth were clenched so hard his jaw ached. The Zeno ember at his center began to react, not by growing, by still. In the middle of that violent internal collision, the ember became the only thing in his body that wasn't moving, a single point of absolute quiet. And the two warring energies, the destroyer and the preserver, felt it. Both turned toward it. Both recognized it. Because the ember was not power. It was not technique or transformation or divine energy. It was a choice. Zeno's choice to die for someone who had imprisoned him. The purest, most irrational, most undeniable act in the history of the multiverse. An act that even the Void could not process. Because the Void operated on logic, on cost and benefit, on erasure as the ultimate authority. But a king choosing death to save the man who took his throne had no logical framework. It simply was. The two energies inside Goku stopped fighting each other. They aligned, not into a new transformation with fire and light, into something that had no visual signature at all. The temperature around Goku's body dropped, not metaphorically, literally. The concept of cold, which should not have existed in a dimension without physics, manifested. Frost crystallized in the empty space around him. Geometric, perfect, silent. Akumo's presence recoiled. One full step backward. The first time he had moved away from anything in billions of years. What is... He stopped himself. Goku stood up, slowly, without drama, without a transformation sequence, without a single particle of visible ki. He was not glowing. He was not radiating power. He was simply standing. But the frost around him spread outward in a perfect sphere. 3 meters, then 10, then 30, crystallizing the erasure dimension itself. The prison's walls, the invisible conceptual architecture, began to develop a thin, shimmering coat of ice. Akumo's voice returned, stripped of its earlier patience, stripped of its intimacy. Raw. That is not possible. Goku tilted his head slightly. His dragon pupils had changed. They were no longer red. They were colorless, transparent, like looking through a window into something that had no name yet. You built this cage to suppress power, Goku said. His voice was quiet, completely calm. The calm of a man standing in the eye of a storm he is generating. But this isn't power. He unclenched his right fist. Ice crystals drifted off his knuckles like falling snow. This is what's left when power stops. The frost reached the edge of the prison. And the prison, the dimension built from erased existence, from the annihilation of timelines, from Akumo's absolute authority over the concept of time itself. Cracked. One hairline fracture, thin as a whisper, but in a dimension that had never once been touched from the inside. It was everything. Akumo materialized, not as a voice, not as pressure, as a form. Enormous, white, ancient. His eyes, 12 of them, arranged in a crown around a face that had forgotten what emotion felt like, fixed on Goku with an expression that had not crossed his features in longer than the multiverse had existed. Alarm. He raised one hand. The erasure light gathered in his palm. Blinding. Absolute. The light that had unmade the concept of gods. He brought it down toward Goku with the full weight of his authority. The blast hit and stopped. Suspended in mid-air, frozen inside a perfect crystalline structure 6 inches from Goku's face. Goku looked at it, tilted his head, the way a man looks at an insect that has landed on glass. Then he looked up at Akumo, and for the first time in this entire confrontation, Goku smiled. Not with triumph, not with aggression, with the specific, quiet recognition of a fighter who has finally found solid ground. "Okay," he said simply. "Now we can fight." Akumo's 12 eyes narrowed simultaneously. The frozen erasure blast between them hung in the air like a monument to impossibility. He studied it, the way a mathematician studies an equation that has produced the wrong answer, not with panic, but with the cold, methodical precision of something that has never needed to recalculate before. He reached out one finger toward the frozen blast, touched it. It shattered, not from his power, from cold. The fragments dissolved before they hit the ground, that still did not exist. Akumo lowered his hand. He looked at Goku. Goku looked back. Neither moved. The frost continued spreading outward in silence, crystallizing the architecture of the erasure dimension 1 centimeter at a time. Akumo spoke first. "You were using stillness as a weapon, not a question." An observation delivered with the tone of something being filed away. Goku did not confirm or deny it. He simply rolled his right shoulder once, a small automatic gesture, the kind a fighter makes when transitioning from defense to offense. Akumo saw it. His form expanded. 3 meters tall became 10. 10 became 30. The erasure light around him intensified, until looking directly at him felt like staring into the moment before creation. "I have consumed stillness before," he said, his voice now resonating from every direction simultaneously. "I consumed the concept of peace in Universe 3. I consumed the concept of rest in Universe 7. Stillness is simply silence with ambition." He raised both hands. 12 pillars of erasure light descended from above, from a ceiling that had not existed until this moment. Goku watched them fall. He did not dodge. He did not raise a shield. He exhaled once, long and slow, and the frost around him surged upward to meet the pillars. The collision produced no explosion, no shockwave, no sound. The pillars simply stopped, frozen in place like 12 white columns, holding up a sky made of erasure. Akumo's eyes swept across the frozen pillars. Something moved through his expression, too fast to name, too old to read. He unleashed a lateral wave, flat, horizontal, absolute, designed not to destroy Goku's body, but to erase the space Goku occupied. No space, no foothold, no existence. The wave expanded outward at the speed of a law being enforced. Goku stepped forward. Into it! The wave hit him across the chest. His body registered the impact, the erasure pressure, trying to find the seam between his existence and the space around him, trying to slide one from the other, like removing a page from a book. It found no seam. The absolute zero state had removed the boundary between Goku and his environment. He was not in the space. He was the space. The wave passed through him, behind him, gone. Goku took another step forward. The frost beneath his feet crystallized the non-existent ground with each step, creating surface where there had been none, turning the prison into something that had texture and direction and memory. Akumo retreated one step, then caught himself, straightened. His 12 eyes burned white. "You are not stronger than me," he said. The words were not defensive. They were load-bearing, the way a pillar is load-bearing, the way removing one word would collapse the whole structure. Goku stopped walking. He stood 10 meters from Akumo now, close enough to see the geometry of those 12 ancient eyes, close enough to see the thing living inside that statement. Fear was the wrong word. It was older than fear. It was the specific discomfort of a predator encountering something that does not register as prey, and does not register as predator, and therefore has no category. Goku's right hand rose slowly. He looked at his own fist. The knuckles were pale with cold. Frost crystals caught the non-light of the erasure dimension and refracted it into colors that should not have existed here. He thought about Bardock, a face he had never truly known, reconstructed from second-hand stories and a handful of fragmented visions. A man who had looked at his own extinction and thrown a punch anyway. Not because it would work, because it was the only honest response to an unjust universe. He thought about Gohan, 7 years old, on a battlefield, screaming with a power he had not chosen and could not control, standing between his father and death. He thought about Vegeta, proud, furious, perpetually furious Vegeta, who had spent his entire life performing indifference to a world he cared about more than anyone. He thought about Zeno, the small, childlike Omni-King who had sat in a prison of Goku's making and chosen, with full understanding of what it cost, to spend the last of his existence breaking a trap so that a man who had taken everything from him could have one more chance. The ember in Goku's chest blazed, not outward, inward, deeper and deeper, burning through layers of technique and transformation and divine power, down to something underneath all of it. Something that had no name in the language of gods. In the language of Saiyans, it had no name either. It was simply the thing that made a Saiyan fight. Not for victory, not for power, not for pride, for the irrational, indefensible, completely human conviction that some things should not end. Goku's fist began to change. Not with fire, not with lightning or dragon scales or angelic light, with density. The air around his fist compressed, not from ki pressure, but from the accumulated weight of every memory he had just carried through his mind. Every person, every choice, every timeline Akumo had tried to erase. They were in the fist now, permanently, indelibly, because Goku remembered them. And memory, real memory, carried in the body of a living being who refused to forget, was the one thing the void had no mechanism to consume. You cannot erase what has already been witnessed. Akumo felt it. His form shuddered, the first involuntary physical response he had produced in eons. His 12 eyes tracked the fist with sudden, absolute focus. That is not a technique, he said. His voice had changed. The intimacy was gone. The patience was gone. What remained was something stripped down to its most fundamental state, an ancient being confronting the one variable it had never successfully modeled. That is not power or energy or transformation, he continued, and the words came faster now, the cadence breaking its own rhythm. What is that? Not a question. A demand. Goku lowered his eyes from his fist to Akumo's face. His expression was not triumphant. It was not angry. It carried the specific, quiet weight of a man who has finally stopped running from something and turned around to face it. It's everything you tried to make not matter, Goku said. He took one step forward. The frost exploded outward from that single footfall, racing across the prison floor in every direction, climbing the invisible walls, coating the frozen erasure pillars, spreading across the ceiling that Akumo had materialized and now clearly wished he hadn't. The entire dimension groaned. Not structurally, existentially. Like a system encountering an input it was never designed to process. Akumo moved. Fast. Faster than Goku had seen him move in any previous exchange. A sudden, total commitment of force, both hands driving forward with the full weight of his void authority, trying to end this before the next step could land. The blast was not erasure light. It was something beneath erasure light. The raw substrate of his power. The thing that erasure was merely the expression of. It hit Goku dead center. The force was enormous. Goku's feet carved twin grooves into the newly crystallized ground. 10 meters, 20, 30. The impact driving him backward across his own frost. He stopped himself. One hand pressed to the ground. One knee down. He looked up through the dissipating pressure. His shirt was gone, burned away by the raw contact with Akumo's substrate power. The platinum scales across his torso had fractured in 3 places. Hairline cracks running across his chest like a broken mirror. Dark fluid, not blood, something deeper, traced slow lines along the fractures. Goku looked down at the damage. His jaw set. He pressed one foot flat against the ground, then the other. He stood. Akumo was already moving again, closing the distance, one hand drawing back for a finishing strike, his 12 eyes burning with the cold certainty of an equation being completed. Goku did not dodge. He did not block. He planted both feet, drew his right arm back. The fist blazed. Not with light, but with that dense, wordless, unnameable weight. The weight of witnessed things that refuse to be forgotten. His dragon pupils fixed on Akumo's center. Not his chest, not his eyes. His center. The place where even gods keep the thing they cannot afford to lose. Akumo's strike arrived first. It connected with Goku's left shoulder, the impact shearing away 2 more plates of platinum scale and spinning him 45 degrees off axis. But his feet did not move, and his right arm was already in motion. The punch traveled approximately 1 meter. In the physical sense, it was a small movement. In every other sense, it crossed every timeline Akumo had ever erased, every universe he had ever consumed, every god he had ever made kneel. The fist connected. The sound it made was not an explosion. It was the sound of something being remembered so hard that forgetting it became structurally impossible. Akumo's form fractured, not physically, conceptually. Cracks appeared in his white light. Dark cracks, running through the erasure energy like fault lines. And through those cracks, something poured out. Color, sound, time, the memories of everything he had ever erased, flooding back through the fractures in his form, demanding to be real again. Akumo's 12 eyes went wide. All 12, simultaneously. He looked down at the cracks in his own existence with an expression that required no translation across any species or dimension. It was the expression of something realizing, for the first time, that it was mortal. Goku stood directly in front of him, arm extended, fist still pressed against Akumo's center. Frost spreading outward from the point of contact in a perfect, silent circle. Neither of them moved. The entire erasure dimension held its breath. Then Goku pulled his fist back, slowly, deliberately. He looked at the cracks running through Akumo's form. He looked at the color and sound and time bleeding out through those cracks, cascading into the dead dimension like light into a dark room. He breathed in. He breathed out. One more, he said quietly. Not to Akumo, to himself. His right hand began to draw back again, and the frost on every surface in the dimension shattered simultaneously. Not from destruction, from release. Every crystal exploding into pure white light as the absolute zero state reached its convergence point. Goku's eyes closed for exactly 1 second. In that second, somewhere in the fragments of 12 deteriorating universes, every being that had ever been erased by Akumo felt something impossible. Warmth. Then Goku's eyes opened. The dragon pupils were no longer colorless. They burned gold. Not Super Saiyan gold. Something older. Something that had been waiting underneath every transformation he had ever achieved. Patient, permanent, and absolutely certain. He stepped forward. The step landed. The non-existent ground fractured beneath it. Not from force, but from significance. Reality asserting itself into a space that had been built to deny reality. Akumo moved backward, not a tactical retreat, a recoil, the instinctive, involuntary backward motion of something that has spent eternity advancing and has just encountered the concept of retreat for the first time. His 12 eyes tracked Goku's every micro-movement with desperate precision. The cracks in his form had not closed. They had spread. 3 had become 9. 9 had become 30. The color and sound and time bleeding through them had thickened from a trickle to a torrent, cascading through the fractures in his white existence like rivers breaking through a dam. He pressed one hand against his own chest. The gesture was unmistakably human, unmistakably frightened. He applied erasure pressure to the cracks from the inside, trying to seal them the way he had sealed timelines, the way he had sealed universes, the way he had sealed everything that had ever threatened his authority. The cracks resisted. They pushed back, because the memories flooding through them were not passive. They were insistent. A child in Universe 9 who had drawn a picture of the sky the morning before Akumo erased her world. The image so vivid and so completely real that the void had no framework to process it. A soldier in Universe 4 who had died protecting a gate that led to nothing important. His last thought, not of glory, but of the specific warmth of afternoon light on his hands. A god in Universe 11 who had spent 10,000 years building a garden that no one would ever see, and had found that sufficient. Small things. Completely small things. The Void had always dismissed them as irrelevant. Akumo had always dismissed them as noise. But noise, accumulated across 12 universes across billions of years, applied through a single fist to the center of the being that had tried to silence it, was deafening. Goku covered the remaining distance in 4 steps. Each step crystallized the ground beneath it permanently, not with frost now, but with something denser, something that had the texture of permanence, the physical manifestation of things that had decided to keep existing. Akumo raised both hands. He did not fire Erasure Light. He did not use substrate power. He reached instead for the deepest mechanism in his arsenal, the one he had used only once before, at the very beginning of his conquest, to erase the being who had created him. Void absolute, not erasure of matter or energy or time. Erasure of the concept of opposition itself. The technique formed between his palms, a black sphere so dense it bent the light from Goku's golden eyes around it. No technique could oppose Void Absolute, because Void Absolute erased the capacity to oppose. He drove it forward, directly at Goku's chest. Goku saw it. He felt the technique's intention before it arrived, the way it reached ahead of itself, searching for the part of his mind that generated resistance, preparing to remove it. He did not resist. He did not generate opposition. He simply remained present, completely present, the way the Zeno ember had remained. Not fighting the prison, not pushing against the cage, simply burning in its own right, in its own terms, on its own authority. Void Absolute hit him. The black sphere detonated against his chest. The shockwave erased the space around Goku in a perfect sphere, 3 meters of pure conceptual nothing, surrounding him completely. Akumo's 12 eyes waited. 1 second, 2, 3. The nothing cleared. Goku stood inside it, unchanged. The golden pupils burned steady. The fractured platinum scales on his chest glowed faintly at the cracks. Not healing, not breaking further, simply present, wearing their damage openly the way a veteran wears old scars. Akumo stared. The sphere between his palms had gone dark. Void Absolute had no second application. It was not designed to need one. Goku tilted his head very slightly. "Is that everything?" he asked. Not with arrogance, with genuine inquiry. The tone of a fighter who needs to know if there is anything left to account for before committing fully. Akumo's form trembled. The trembling started at the outer edges of his white light, the periphery of his existence, and moved inward. His 12 eyes shifted, not to another technique, not to another power. They shifted the way eyes shift when something looks inward. When something looks at what it actually is, underneath the authority and the power and the ancient certainty. When something looks and finds the answer smaller than expected. His voice came out differently, quieter, stripped of resonance. "I have existed since before existence had a name," he said. "I watched the first universe form from nothing. I watched it grow arrogant. I corrected it." A pause. The cracks in his form pulsed with escaped color. "Everything I have done has been correction," he continued. "Order imposed on chaos. Silence imposed on noise." His voice dropped further. "I am not the villain of this story." Goku listened. He stood completely still and listened with the full attention he gave to everything: opponents, friends, the wind, the specific sound a fight makes when it is about to change. He waited until Akumo finished. Then he spoke. "I know," he said simply. Akumo's eyes refocused. "You were doing what made sense to you," Goku continued. His voice carried no judgment, no anger. The complete, disarming sincerity that had unnerved gods and demons, and every being that had ever expected hatred from him and received honesty instead. "But the girl who drew the picture of the sky," Goku said. "The soldier at the gate. The god with the garden." He took one more step forward. They were doing what made sense to them, too. He raised his right fist. The golden light deepened, not brighter, denser, compressing inward, becoming something that occupied less space and weighed more than a dying star. And they didn't get a say. Akumo looked at the fist for one long, ancient moment. He looked at it the way something looks at a mirror it has been avoiding. Then something in his 12 eyes changed. Not softened. Recognized. He lowered his hands. Not in surrender. in the specific, exhausted posture of something that has been carrying an argument for billions of years and has just heard the one sentence that makes the argument unsustainable. "You cannot undo what I have done," he said quietly. "No," Goku agreed, "but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." He drove the fist forward. The absolute dragon fist. No fire, no roar, no explosive transformation sequence. Just the full, accumulated, irreducible weight of every witnessed moment, every remembered face, every small and completely real thing that had ever existed in the 12 universes and refused, even in erasure, to stop being true. The fist entered Akumo's center. The contact point flared, not with light, but with color. Every color that had ever bled through the cracks in his form, erupting simultaneously from the point of impact, flooding outward in every direction. Sound followed the color. Every sound that the void had ever consumed. Voices, wind, water, the specific harmonic of living things going about the business of being alive, returned in a single, overwhelming wave. Then time followed the sound. Not chaotically, correctly. Each moment flowing back to its proper place. Past settling behind present, future opening ahead. The linear structure of existence reasserting itself with the quiet authority of something that was always supposed to be there. Akumo's form fractured along every crack simultaneously. His 12 eyes, one by one, went dark. Not in sequence, not dramatically, simply one by one, like lights in a building at the end of the day. His voice reached Goku one final time, not with power, not with threat, with something underneath both of those things that had not surfaced in longer than the multiverse had existed. "I remember the first sky," he said. His form was mostly fractured now. White light dissolving at the edges, the color of escaped memories consuming what remained. Before I decided it needed correcting. It was a pause so long it contained entire seconds. Sufficient. The last fragment of white light dissolved. Akumo, the father of Zeno, the architect of the void, the being who had erased the concept of gods and nearly erased the concept of existence itself, was gone. Not destroyed, not simply killed, unmade from every timeline simultaneously, every echo, every shadow, every residual impression his presence had left on the fabric of existence. Gently, permanently, irreversibly removed. The erasure dimension shuddered once, then began to dissolve. The prison walls, the invisible conceptual architecture, fell apart like old paper in water. Slowly, completely, without drama, Goku stood in the dissolving space and watched it go. His right arm hung at his side. The golden light in his eyes faded, gradually, like embers cooling, returning to the transparent colorlessness of the absolute zero state. Then that too faded. What remained was the red dragon pupils, vertical, ancient, steady. He looked at his right fist one final time. The frost crystals were gone. The platinum scales had stopped bleeding. The knuckles were unmarked, as if the fist had passed through something that had no physical resistance, only conceptual weight, which was exactly what had happened. He breathed in, the first breath in a space that had air again. Real air, with texture and temperature and the faint, unmistakable quality of air that exists inside time. He breathed out. Below him, through the dissolving floor of the erased dimension, the 12 universes became visible, slowly brightening. Planets that had been aging centuries in minutes reversed course, reforming, cooling, rebuilding. Oceans that had evaporated condensed back across dry ocean floors. Mountains that had dissolved began, grain by grain, to remember their shape. In the palace halls, Whis straightened. His hand left the wall. He looked at his staff. The readings had returned. He looked up at the sky, now whole, no longer fracturing, and his expression moved through several rapid transformations before settling on something that had no proper name in the language of angels. In Universe 6, Vados rose from her kneel. She looked at her hands, then at the sky. Then she did something that beings of her composure almost never do. She closed her eyes and simply stood there for a long moment, feeling the universe exist around her, feeling it persist. In the ruins of Akumo's void fortress, the 5,000 fallen angels that had invaded on his behalf dissolved quietly into dispersing dark energy, their connection to the void severed with their master's erasure. No battle required, no final conflict. They simply stopped, like instruments that have lost their player. In the prison where Goku had contained him, in the place between dimensions where a small, childlike Omni King had spent the months since his defeat in quiet contemplation, Zeno's prison ceased to exist. The walls fell away. The Omni King sat in open space. No ceiling, no floor. Just the multiverse stretching in every direction, vast, luminous, and inexplicably, improbably whole. He looked around with wide, simple eyes. He looked at his hands. Smaller now. The life force he had spent to break Akumo's time trap having left him diminished, mortal in ways he had never been before. He was no longer an Omni King. He was simply a small being in a very large universe. He looked up, through layers of dimension and space and the repaired fabric of existence, toward the place where the erasure dimension had been. He could not see Goku, but he smiled anyway. The smile of someone who made the right choice and knows it, not because of the outcome, but because of what the choice itself had been. Goku felt it, that smile, from across every dimension between them. The ember in his chest, which had burned since the moment Zeno poured his life force into breaking the time trap, pulsed once. Warm, final, then went still. Not extinguished. Complete. Goku exhaled. He looked at the 12 universes below him, restored, breathing, alive. He looked at them for a long time. The dissolving prison had left him standing in open space, between dimensions, between universes, in the precise nowhere that existed at the structural center of everything. He had no throne here, no palace, no title, just the silence. And for a being who had spent his entire existence moving, fighting, training, transforming, surpassing, the silence felt unfamiliar. Not unwelcome, unfamiliar. He sat down again, cross-legged, in the center of everything. His dragon pupils swept the 12 universes slowly, methodical, steady, the way a guardian watches over something that does not know it is being watched. Universe 1, intact. Universe 2, rebuilding. Universe 3 through 11, damaged but breathing. Universe 12. His pupils stopped. He leaned forward very slightly. Universe 12 looked different from the others. Not damaged, not rebuilding. Sealed, a membrane, thin, almost invisible, the color of something that exists just below perception, had formed around Universe 12's outer boundary. Goku had not put it there. Akumo had not put it there. It was new. It had formed in the last few seconds, while he had been watching the other 11 universes restore themselves, while his attention had been elsewhere. He stared at it. His eyes narrowed. The membrane pulsed once, slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Goku rose from sitting to standing in a single motion. His entire posture changed. The quiet stillness of the Guardian replaced instantly by the forward weight of the fighter. He extended one hand toward Universe 12. The absolute zero state rose in his palm, frost crystals forming, reaching outward to probe the membrane. The membrane pulsed again, and pulsed back. Not defensively, not aggressively, curiously, as if something inside it had felt the probe and found it. Interesting. Goku's jaw set. His dragon pupils contracted. A sound reached him, not through space, through the membrane itself, transmitted directly through whatever the membrane was made of, a sound that had no parallel in any language or dimension Goku had ever encountered. It was not a roar. It was not a voice. It was the sound of something waking up, something that had been asleep inside Universe 12 for longer than Akumo had existed, something that had been waiting. Not for a signal, not for an event, not for a specific threshold of power to be reached, but for a specific absence. The absence of the one being in existence who had been powerful enough to keep it down. Akumo, Goku's eyes widened by a fraction. The pieces assembled themselves in his mind with the speed of a fighter reading a battlefield. Akumo had not just been a conqueror, he had been a lid. Something old enough to predate the concept of timelines. Something that Akumo, with all his void authority and erasure power and billions of years of conquest, had not destroyed, had only contained, because he could not destroy it, because nothing could. The membrane around Universe 12 split open, not violently, deliberately, like an eye opening. From inside the split, a light emerged. Not white like Akumo's erasure, not golden like Goku's convergence, not platinum or void black or any color that had bled through the cracks in Akumo's form. A color that had no name. A color that existed before color had been differentiated from darkness. Primordial. The light touched Goku's face. His dragon pupils contracted to absolute points. His frost dissipated. Not overpowered, simply irrelevant. The absolute zero state, the platinum dragon power, the void dragon fusion, the Zeno ember, the absolute dragon fist. All of it registered against this light the way a candle registers against the sun. Present, real, completely insufficient. From inside the split membrane, from inside whatever had just woken up inside Universe 12, a single sound emerged. Not a roar, not a voice, not a challenge. A greeting. The greeting of something ancient, recognizing something new. Something that had waited billions of years for the lid to be removed. Something that looked at Goku, at the eternal guardian of existence, the Platinum Dragon King, the being who had just executed the father of Zeno from every timeline simultaneously, and smiled. Goku stared into the light. His hands were loose at his sides. His breathing was controlled. His expression carried every emotion simultaneously, the recognition of a fighter who has just realized the fight was never over, the weariness of a man who has not slept in what feels like several eternities, and underneath both of those things, the faintest, most irrepressible trace of something that no amount of cosmic responsibility had ever fully extinguished. Excitement. The membrane tore completely. The light poured out, and the 12 universes, which had just finished remembering how to breathe, shook. The shaking did not stop. It moved through the 12 universes the way a tremor moves through deep stone. Not on the surface, not in the atmosphere, but in the foundation, in the structural bedrock of existence itself. Planets did not crack. Stars did not collapse. The universes simply vibrated at a frequency that had no physical expression, only a felt one. Every living being across all 12 universes stopped simultaneously, not from fear, from instinct, the deep cellular pre-conscious instinct that predates language and civilization and the concept of self. The instinct that says, something has changed, something fundamental, something that cannot be unchanged. In Universe 7, a farmer on a nameless planet set down his tools and looked at the sky. He did not know why. The sky looked exactly the same, but it felt different. It felt like a sky that was being observed from somewhere it had never been observed from before. In Universe 6, Vados opened her eyes. She had felt the universe restore itself moments ago with quiet relief. Now she felt something else entirely. Her staff rose automatically, reading, measuring, categorizing. The readings came back in a language her staff had never used before. A language she did not recognize. She stared at the output. Her composure, ancient, practiced, absolute, developed a hairline crack. She looked up. That is not possible, she said quietly. To no one, to herself, to whatever was listening. In the space between dimensions, Goku stood at the edge of the torn membrane and looked into the primordial light. His eyes had adjusted. Not because the light had dimmed, because something in his visual system had recalibrated, the dragon pupils expanding and contracting rapidly before settling on a new aperture, one that allowed him to see into a frequency of existence he had never accessed before. What he saw inside the membrane made his breath stop for exactly 2 seconds. Not a being, not a form, not a god or a dragon or an angel or any category of entity he had encountered across his entire existence. A space, vast beyond measurable scale, perfectly silent, perfectly dark. Except for one thing. At the center of that space, so distant it should have been invisible, so ancient it should have been incomprehensible, a single point of primordial light. Burning, patient, aware. Aware of Goku specifically. Aware of him in the way that something is aware of you when it has been watching you for your entire life without your knowledge. Goku's dragon pupils fixed on that point of light. He felt it fix back on him. The contact was not aggressive. It was not threatening in the way that Akumo had been threatening, loud with authority, thick with erasure pressure, announcing itself at every turn. This was the opposite. This was the silence underneath silence, the darkness underneath darkness. The thing that existed before existence had a framework to contain it. Goku's right hand rose slowly. Not to fight, to reach. The absolute zero state rose in his palm. Frost crystals forming, extending outward toward the distant light. The light watched the frost extend toward it. Then, very gently, it exhaled. The breath crossed the impossible distance in less than a second. It hit the frost. The frost dissolved, not violently, not with power, with the casual, effortless dissolution of something encountering a force so fundamentally mismatched that resistance was not even a relevant concept. The way sunlight dissolves morning fog. The way the ocean dissolves a sandcastle. Not malicious, simply disproportionate. Goku lowered his hand. He looked at his palm. The frost was gone. Not a single crystal remained. His palm was warm. He had not been warm since the absolute zero state had emerged. He stared at his palm for 3 full seconds. Then he looked back up at the distant point of light. His jaw was set. His expression had moved past the flicker of excitement that had surfaced a moment ago. What remained was something older in him, the core assessment process that had evaluated every opponent since childhood. The part of him that looked at a threat and asked, not can I win, but what does winning actually require? He reached inward. Platinum Dragon, present, damaged, functional. Void Dragon fusion, present, stabilized, functional. Absolute zero convergence, present, reduced. The dissolution of his frost had cost him something. A small but measurable reduction in the state's depth. Zeno ember, still. Complete, he had thought when it stilled. Now he wondered if complete had been the right word, or if spent was more accurate. He reached for it anyway. Found nothing. The ember was gone. Not extinguished. Used up. Completely and permanently converted into the absolute dragon fist. He had known this on some level. He had not paused to calculate what it cost. He paused now. The accounting was not comfortable. He looked at the distant primordial light. He looked at his reduced convergence state. He looked at the 12 universes behind him, still vibrating at that deep foundational frequency, still processing the fact that something had woken up inside Universe 12. He made a decision not to fight. Not yet, to understand first. He took one step toward the membrane. The primordial light pulsed. The pulse carried information, not in language, not in key reading, not in any transmission format Goku had ever encountered. In pressure. Direct pressure applied to the specific part of his awareness that processed meaning. The message was simple. 4 concepts delivered simultaneously without sequence or hierarchy. Ancient. Waiting. Patient. Ready. Goku stopped walking. He processed the 4 concepts. Ancient. Older than Akumo. Older than the concept of gods. Older than the multiverse's first breath. Waiting. Not dormant, not imprisoned, not suppressed. Waiting by choice. Patient. Content to wait for whatever condition needed to be met before it moved. Ready. The condition had been met. Goku's eyes narrowed. What condition? He said aloud, not expecting an answer in language. Asking because the question needed to exist in the space between them. The light pulsed again. One concept this time. You, Goku, went very still. Not the absolute zero stillness. The stillness of a mind encountering a piece of information that requires complete reprocessing of all previous assumptions. You, not your power, not your transformation. Not your role as Guardian or Dragon King or Eternal Protector. You, Goku, specifically. This thing had been waiting. Inside Universe 12, sealed under Akumo's lid, patient across billions of years of existence, for Goku to reach this specific moment, this specific state, this specific place between dimensions, reduced and warm-palmed and ember spent, and standing at the torn edge of an impossible membrane. The implications move through him like cold water. Not pleasant, not unpleasant. Clarifying, he had not stumbled into this. He had been led here. Every step. Zalama's offer of primal power. The Grand Priest's conflict. Zeno's imprisonment. Akumo's emergence. The time trap. The absolute zero convergence. The absolute dragon fist. He turned around. He looked at the 12 universes. Still vibrating. Still breathing. Alive because of everything he had done across the last 2 series of battles. He thought about Zalama, the old dragon god who had sacrificed his soul to act as a limiter, who had given his entire existence to stabilize Goku's chaotic power, and then disappeared into the platinum dragon form as a permanent passenger. Zalama had known. Goku understood that now with absolute certainty. Zalama had known this moment was coming, had prepared Goku for it specifically, not for Akumo. For this, for whatever lived inside Universe 12, for whatever had been patient enough to wait for Akumo to be removed. He turned back to face the membrane. The primordial light had moved. It was closer now, not dramatically. It had not crossed the impossible distance inside the membrane space, but it was perceptibly closer than it had been 30 seconds ago. Moving slowly, at the pace of something that is in no hurry because it has already waited billions of years. And a few more minutes is nothing. Goku watched it approach. His hands hung loose at his sides. He felt Zalama stir inside him. Not speaking, not providing power or technique or guidance. Simply present. The way a teacher is present at a student's final examination. Not helping. Witnessing. Goku exhaled through his nose. He looked at his right fist. The fist that had just executed Akumo from every timeline simultaneously. The fist that had carried the weight of every witnessed moment across 12 universes. He closed it slowly. Opened it, closed it again. The gesture of a fighter taking inventory of a weapon he is not certain will be sufficient. Zalama, he said quietly. The presence inside him shifted. Attentive. What is it? Goku asked. Not frantically, not with desperation. With the direct, uncomplicated sincerity of someone asking a question they genuinely need answered. Zalama's presence moved through his awareness like a slow tide. The response came not in words, but in sensation. A deep, resonant vibration that translated into meaning the way music translates into emotion. The meaning was this: it has no name because it existed before naming was possible. It has no form because it existed before form was differentiated from formlessness. It is not evil. It is not good. It is the condition that existed before those concepts were separated. It has been watching the multiverse since the first universe formed. It watched Akumo. It watched me. It has been watching you since the moment you accepted the primal power. And it has been waiting, not to destroy, to test. What it tests? No being has ever survived. Not because they were too weak, because they were not yet complete. Goku absorbed this, processed, filed it. And me, he said. The Zalama tide moved again. The response was shorter, unknown. Goku looked at the approaching light. Closer still, he could see it more clearly now. Not a sphere, not a beam, not a form with edges or surfaces. A density, a concentration of something so fundamental that matter and energy and time were merely its byproducts. The way heat is a byproduct of combustion rather than the thing itself. It reached the edge of the membrane, stopped. It looked at Goku across the threshold. Goku looked back. The 12 universes behind him shook harder. Not destructively, resonantly, like strings vibrating in response to a frequency being played nearby. Every angel in every universe felt it. Every god of destruction. Every mortal with enough sensitivity to feel the difference between ordinary existence and existence that is being evaluated. In Universe 7, Whis turned slowly. His expression had passed through every available register and arrived at something that had no proper designation in the catalog of angel expressions. He pressed 2 fingers to his temple. Oh, he said softly. Just that. Oh. In the space between dimensions, the primordial light crossed the membrane threshold. It entered the space where Goku stood. The temperature changed. Not colder, not warmer, older. The air took on the quality of something that predated weather, predated atmosphere, predated the physical laws that governed temperature in the first place. Goku felt it hit his skin, felt it move through his skin, into the platinum scales, into the void black beneath them, into the Saiyan cells underneath everything, into whatever was underneath those. The primordial light was reading him thoroughly, methodically, without violence, without permission. Goku led it. He stood with his arms at his sides and his dragon pupils wide open and let the oldest thing in existence read him from the inside out. He felt it reach Zalama, felt the old dragon god's presence recognize the primordial light with something that was not quite fear and not quite reverence. A combination of both that had no single word to contain it. He felt it reach the Zeno ember, find it spent, pause there for a long moment. He felt something change in the light's assessment at that point. A subtle shift, like a scale tipping a fraction of a degree. Then it reached the Saiyan core, the base layer, the thing underneath every transformation and every divine fusion and every cosmic power he had ever acquired or been given or earned. The thing that had been there since he was a child, throwing punches at rocks on a mountain with an old man who taught him that a fight was not about winning. It was about showing up completely, without reservation, with everything you had, everything you were, everything you had ever cared about channeled into the single honest act of being present in the fight. The primordial light stayed at the Saiyan core for a very long time. Goku watched the 12 universes and waited. He did not fidget. He did not second guess. He waited the way fighters wait. Alert, grounded, ready, without the energy cost of anxiety. Then the light withdrew. It pulled back through every layer. Saiyan core, Zalama, Void Dragon, Platinum Scales, retreating to its concentrated density a few meters in front of Goku. It regarded him. Goku regarded it back. 1 second of complete silence. 2, 5. Then the primordial light did something that no record in any universe had ever documented it doing before. It spoke, not in pressure concepts, not in sensations translated into meaning, in language. Old language, older than any dialect Goku had ever heard, but comprehensible in the way that certain things are comprehensible not through learning, but through something deeper, through recognition. You spent the ember, it said. Goku nodded once. You knew what it cost. Yes. You spent it anyway. Yes. A pause. Why? Goku looked at it directly, because Akumo needed to be stopped. That is the outcome, the light said, not the reason. Goku's eyes held steady. He thought about the girl who drew the picture of the sky, the soldier at the gate, the god with the garden, because they deserved to have existed, he said. Past tense. The light observed. Even the ones who are already gone, Goku said. Even the ones I can't bring back. Even the ones nobody remembers. His voice did not waver. It still matters that they were real. The primordial light was silent. Around them, the 12 universes had stopped vibrating. Not because the threat had passed, because everything was listening. The light pulsed once, deep, resonant, like the first heartbeat of a universe deciding whether to expand or collapse. Then it did something that Zalama's entire presence inside Goku contracted with shock to witness. It bowed. Not deeply, not elaborately. A single, minimal inclination. The kind of bow that costs something to give from something that has never given it before. The condition, it said, has been met. Goku's eyes narrowed slightly. What condition? The one I have been waiting for, the light said. A guardian who protects the dead as fiercely as the living. It rose from the bow. Every guardian before you protected power. Protected order, protected the concept of existence as an asset to be managed. Its density shifted, expanding fractionally, filling more of the space between them. You protected a drawing of a sky that no one will ever see again. That is different. Goku absorbed this in silence. Then, so what happens now? The primordial light regarded him, and something moved through its ancient, formless, nameless density that was, unmistakably, the precursor to an answer that would change everything. Again, Now it's said the membrane behind it tore completely open from inside. From the impossible vast dark space within Universe 12, something began to emerge. Not the light itself. Something behind the light. Something the light had been standing in front of. Something it had been, not guarding. Containing. Goku's dragon pupils dilated. His entire body shifted weight. Forward. Automatic. The fighter's instinct overriding every other process. The thing behind the light was enormous. Not in physical scale. In conceptual scale. The scale of something whose existence changed the rules of the space it occupied simply by being present in it. It moved toward the torn membrane with the slow, inevitable momentum of a tide. The primordial light turned to face it. For the first time, the light that had just bowed to Goku, the light that had existed before existence, had a name, looked at something else, and became very still. The 12 universes screamed, not in sound, in structural distress. Every law of physics in every universe flexing simultaneously under a pressure that physics was not designed to accommodate. Whis dropped his staff. It clattered against the floor of a dissolving palace hallway and lay there, spinning slowly, its readings scrolling faster than angel perception could process. Vados pressed both hands flat against the sky of Universe 6, as if she could hold it up by touch. In the space between dimensions, Goku stood between the primordial light and the torn membrane, between the oldest known thing and whatever was older still. His hands were loose. His breathing was controlled. His dragon pupils burned steady red in the sudden, terrible dark. He looked at the thing emerging from Universe 12. He looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he looked at the primordial light beside him. "Is that what you were containing?" he asked. The light's response came back immediately. "Yes." "For how long?" "Since before the first universe." Goku looked back at the emerging thing. "And you need me to—" "I need nothing," the light said. "I am telling you what is. What you choose to do with it," it continued, "is the test. The real one." Goku's jaw set. He looked at 12 universes behind him, alive, breathing, restored, filled with farmers setting down tools and angels dropping staffs and small, childlike former Omni-Kings sitting in open space looking at their mortal hands. He looked at the thing coming through the membrane. He looked at his right fist. The fist that had just spent everything it had to protect the memory of a drawing no one would ever see again. His mouth curved. Not wide, not triumphant. The small, private, completely honest expression of a man who would not have it any other way. He stepped forward, toward the membrane, toward the thing that had existed before existence, toward the test that nothing had ever survived. The primordial light watched him go. And for the second time in billions of years of existence, it felt something it had forgotten was possible. Hope. The membrane swallowed Goku completely. The 12 universes held their breath. The thing from before the beginning continued to emerge, and the space between dimensions went dark. The membrane seals behind him. The 12 universes wait. The thing from before the beginning moves. Goku stepped into the test that nothing has ever survived. With a spent ember, fractured scales, and the memory of a drawing no one will ever see again. Has the ultimate condition truly been fulfilled? Or did the primordial light bow to Goku too soon? Type yes or no in the comments and explain your reasoning. The most compelling answer gets pinned.